Hi, AP. All right, today we're going to talk about secondary dominance. But before we talk about secondary dominance, let's review primary dominance. Now, when you hear the word dominant, what should come to mind is the 5 chord in a major or minor key, 5 being the dominant and loving the resolution to 1. So all we're going to do to review primary dominance is just do 5 1 resolutions in the following keys: A major, F major, and C major. And actually, I'm going to make them 7th chords. So we'll do 5, 7, resolving to 1, all in root position. So the 5 chord of A is going to be E. We need a dominant 7th. G sharp, B, and D. D is the 7th, so always resolve the 7th of that 7th chord downward by step. That's in the soprano. Let me add my bass note in next. I'll jump down to the low A. And I'll have some contrary motion here, going up to the tenor. And an E. Okay, I have a doubled third. I think what I'll do is put the tenor on Do. If you sing the song, you can't go wrong. Sol, Do, Re, Do, Ti, Do, Fa, Mi. Ti is not going to Do in the alto because it's an inner voice. I can go Ti to Sol. So I've correctly resolved that 5-7 chord. In the next measure, I'm in the key of F major. My 5-7 chord is going to be a C, E, G, B flat. So there I've decided to put those in close spacing. The 7th of that 5-7 chord is the B flat. That's Fa. Fa will go down to Mi. The bass can sing this F or the F2, doesn't matter. And we'll have Ti go down to Sol in the alto because it's an inner voice, it can do that. And we'll have Re go to Do. Re never goes to Mi. Re goes to Do. And I have a doubled root. In the next measure, I have the 5-7 of C major, which would then be G. Let's do this. Put that there. G, B, D, F, like that. The 7th of that 7th chord is in the alto. That needs to resolve down, Fa to Mi. T is in the soprano. T is going to go to Do, not Sol, because it's an outer voice. And my bass will go C to G. And then I have a Re, which will go to Do. Don't put Re to Mi, but put Re to Do. So in the last measure, you see I have a tripled root and 1/3. I've omitted the 5th. And that's resolving the 5-7 chord correctly. So all we just did here was complete review of primary dominance before we talk about secondary dominance, which is coming up next. Okay, a secondary dominant is an altered chord having a dominant or leading tone relationship to a chord in the key other than the tonic. That's a little bit wordy, but in a nutshell, a secondary dominant means we're going to see an accidental in the chord that's not part of the key signature, which is going to lead us to a temporary new tonic. So again, a secondary dominant is an altered chord having a dominant or leading tone relationship to a chord in the key other than the tonic. An altered chord is a chord containing at least one tone that is foreign to the key. So if you come across an accidental in a chord progression in one of the voices, then perhaps you should consider it being a secondary dominant chord. When we use secondary dominance, the result is something called tonicization of the chord of resolution. Tonicization is a big fancy word, but the word tonic exists inside that big word. Tonicization is the process of emphasizing a chord by making it seem like tonic for just a short period of time. So now I'll show you what secondary dominants look like. We'll go back to these three examples in the key of A major, F major, and C major. And you'll often see the Roman numeral analysis of secondary dominant chords be something like this. 5/7 of 5. You'll have a Roman numeral on top of a Roman numeral. And then it would go to the 5 chord. So here you can see that this is a secondary dominant just based on the way the Roman numeral analysis looks, because it has a Roman numeral and then a line and then another Roman numeral underneath it, and then the resolution to the 5 chord. So now we're going to build these 5/7 of 5 chords and then going to the 5 chord. So what you do here is look at the key signature. Let's take A major. And the first thing you want to think of is the 5 chord of the key of A major. So let's spell that together. We built that on the previous frame. E, G sharp, B. That's not the chord that we want to build. We want to build the 5/7 of that 5 chord that we just spelled. So what's the 5/7 chord of that 5 chord? Well, it would be a B in the bass, D sharp, F sharp, A. Keep in mind, we're dealing with secondary dominants, so we need dominant 7th chords. And that's why, if you look at the D sharp, I'll put a square around it, that's going to be the foreign tone that's not part of the key signature in the key of A. And when we write that D sharp, that's going to act like a new leading tone to the key of, you guessed it, E major. So when we see it on paper and when we hear secondary dominants, we're going to hear what appears to sound like a new tonic. So now I can build this 5/7 of 5 chord, and I can put a B in the bass, and I'll put maybe a D sharp here in the tenor. And keep in mind, I now have to put my accidental in because secondary dominant chords will require an accidental in one of the voices. So I have a B, D sharp. Now I need an F sharp, and I need an A. And you're going to resolve the 7th chord the same way you would, where the 7th of the 7th chord resolves downward by step. So that would be the A is the 7th of this 7th chord, and it would resolve downward by step like that. We want to go from this 5/7 of the 5 chord to the 5 chord. So now we can build the 5 chord in the key of A major, which would simply just be E, G sharp, B. So here I have a doubled root, the E. I actually have a tripled root. So what I'll do is I can do that. I can go from T to sol because it's in an inner voice. And that is an example of a secondary dominant. It's not the 5/1 in the key of A major. It's the 5/7 of the 5 going to 5 in the key of A major. So let's try the one in F major. I have to build a 5/7 of a 5 chord and then go to the 5 chord. So I know that I want to go to C, E, G. That's the 5 chord in the key of F major. But I don't want to build that now. I want to build the 5/7 of the 5 chord. So if my 5 chord is C, E, G, then the 5 of that would be G, B natural, D, F. Why B natural and not B flat? Because remember, when we're dealing with secondary dominant chords, we need to build dominant 7th chords. And we know that dominant 7th chords should be a major triad and a minor 7th. So it sounds like sol, ti, re, fa. Okay, so now let's build this G, B natural, D, F chord. G in the bass, B natural I can put here in the tenor, and I'm going to have to draw my natural sign, and there's my foreign tone in the secondary dominant chord. G, B natural, and let's do F and D, like so. We'll keep it in open spacing. Now the B natural is going to assume the role of leading tone. So think of that B natural as a temporary T, or leading tone. B natural goes to C. And now we want to build the 5 chord in the key of F, which would be C, E, G. The altos are singing the F, which is the 7th of this chord. And the 7th likes to resolve down, or should always resolve down. Always resolve the 7th of a 7th chord downward by step. And I'm going to make this a perfect authentic cadence. Notice in the first example, the one in A major, that we have an imperfect cadence. It's an imperfect authentic cadence. I know what you're thinking. It's not an authentic cadence because it ends on 5. Well, to our ears, it's going to sound like it's tonic, because remember, secondary dominants have a temporary tonic sound to them because of that foreign tone. Okay, next one, C major. I need to build the 5/7 of the 5 chord going to the 5 chord. So let's spell the 5 chord. I have a G, B, D. The first thing you're going to want to think of is what the 5 chord is in the key of C major. That's G, B, D. We don't want to build that one first. First, we want to build the 5 of that 5 chord. So that means we're looking at D, F sharp, A, C. Remember, we need a major triad and a minor 7th because we're building dominant 7th chords. Now I can put my root in, D. Let's put an A here. Let's put the C here. And let's put the F sharp right here. Why F sharp? Well, that's our foreign tone. And that F sharp, that accidental, is going to give the appearance on paper and to our ears in sound that that is our temporary leading tone, F sharp. And F sharp would then go to a G, like so. And then I can build my 5 chord in the key of C, which is G, B, D. But I want to make sure that I resolve this secondary dominant chord correctly. Sol goes to Do, T goes to Do, Re goes to Do, and there's my 7th, the C, the 7th of this 7th chord. So the 7th would resolve downward by step to the B, like so. In the third example that I've just done, notice that I have a tripled root and 1/3, and that's perfectly acceptable. You can omit the 5th, especially if you have to have a correct resolution of that 7th chord. So that's a little bit on secondary dominants. Now I think we'll go back and listen to our primary dominants, which is what we first did right here on this page. And then we'll go back and listen to the secondary dominants. So let's look at the first measure in the key of A major. I have the 5/7 going to the 1 chord. Here's the tonic arpeggio in the key of A major. And here's the progression 5/7 to 1. Listen to it again. And now, here is our secondary dominant in the key of A major. Here is the A major arpeggio. And here is our secondary dominant. hopefully that sounded to you like sol, do in the bass. And that's why we call this a secondary dominant, because we have a temporary shift in tonic. So really in the key of A major, we're analyzing these two chords as the 5/7 of the 5 chord going to the 5 chord. So here it is, one more time. And that 5 chord is really the 5 in the key of A major. But to our ears, it sounds like these two chords are 5/1, and they would be 5/1 if we were in the key of E major. But since we're in the key of A major, we must write the Roman numeral analysis as a 5/7 of 5 going to the 5 chord. Let's go back and look at the primary dominant that we wrote in the key of F major. Here's the key of F. Here's our 5/7 of 1. Listen to it again. So you hear the sol, ti, re, fa, and fa's in the tenor, and fa must resolve to mi. Listen to it again. And hopefully you have do in your head. Now we're going to listen to our secondary dominant chord in the key of F major. Here's our secondary dominant chord. And now suddenly tonic sounds like it's a C, and that's because we have a dominant 7th chord, which is a secondary dominant. Listen to it again. Here's the 5/7 of 5 to the 5 chord. No problem. If we were in the key of C major, then our Roman numeral analysis would just be a 5/7 to a 1 chord. But since we're in the key of F, we're using what's called a secondary dominant, where we have a new tone, that B natural, that's foreign to the key signature, that acts as a leading tone towards a new tonic, in this case C. Listen to it again. And here's our first one, just one more time, in the key of F major. And that is the true tonic indeed of F major. Now let's look at the third measure, and we're in the key of C major, and it's simply a 5/7 to a 1, which sounds as follows. Hopefully you hear the bass going sol, do, tenor, re, do, alto, fa, mi. And I'm not going to sing soprano, but you can hear it go. Perfect authentic cadence. Listen to it one more time. And now for the secondary dominant. It's going to sound like we have a new tonic now. And this is not going to be tonic anymore. Now it sounds like G is tonic. In the key of G major, our Roman numeral analysis for this chord would be 5/7 and then 1. But since we're in the key of C major and we have a secondary dominant, this happens to be a 5/7 of 5 going to the 5 chord. Basses, tenors, alto, soprano, sol, ti, re, fa. The altos are singing fa, they have to go down a step to mi, fa. So that's that's a little bit on secondary dominants. We're going to practice some more now. Okay, so let's do some more secondary dominants. Here I have the first measure in the key of D major. And I think I'm going to do a 5, 6, 5 of 5 going to the 5. Typically, whatever the lower Roman numeral is in a secondary dominant, that is the chord that's going to come right after the secondary dominant. And in the key of B flat major, let's do the 5, 7 of the minor 2 going to the minor 2. That's right. So if you look at the first measure, you will see secondary dominants in inversion, as we have here. We have a 5, 6, 5, which means that we need to adhere to that. That's going to be a first inversion 7th chord. And in the second measure, I've just done a 5, 7 of the 2 chord. It does not have to be a 5, 7 of the 5 chord every time. You will come across secondary dominants where you have a 5, 7 of the 2 chord going to the 2 chord, or of the 4 chord going to the 4 chord. And for the last one, let's do a 5, 2 of 5 going to the 5 chord. Okay, so what's the first thing we have to do for the key of D major? Realize that we need to find out just the 5 chord of the key of D major and spell that. So I'm looking at an A, C sharp, E. And that's what I'm going to build here as well. I don't want to build the A, C sharp, E in the first chord because I need a 5 of that A, C sharp, E. So I know that the 5th of this triad, A, C sharp, E, is the E. So I have E. Now I need to spell a dominant 7th chord. E, G sharp, B, D. My foreign tone is going to be the G sharp. My G sharp is also going to be the note that's in the bass. And how do I know that? Because I need to build a 5, 6, 5 of a 5 chord. So I'm going to put a G sharp here. And I'm going to have to add my sharp sign because that is the foreign tone. And I might as well go ahead and realize that that's T, and T needs to go to Do. Now we need to put the other tones in. So let me do this, and I'll put a B here. So I have the G sharp and the B. Now I need the E and the D. So let's put the E here. And let's put the D all the way up here. Okay, the 7th of that 7th chord is the soprano, the D, and that's going to always resolve down, and it's going to resolve down to that C sharp. Sing the song and you can't go wrong. Okay, so where is sol in this 5, 6, 5 chord? Sol is the E. Sol is going to stay right on sol in the alto voice. T is in the bass. T is going to go to Do. Re is in the tenor. Re will also go to Do, not to mi, but to Do. And now I have doubled the root, and I have 1/3, and I have 1/5. And that's a 5, 6, 5 of 5 going to the 5 chord. If we were in the key of A major, our Roman numerals would be 5, 6, 5, and then 1. But since we're in the key of D major, we've added a G sharp, and therefore creating a secondary dominant, or a shift in the tonic. We've tonicized this key. So it's a 5, 6, 5 of 5 going to a 5 chord. Let's look at the next measure. In the key of B flat, we need a 5, 7 of the 2 chord. So the first thing you're going to have to do is figure out what the 2 chord is in the key of B flat. So let's spell it. It's going to be C, E flat, G. We know that the 2 chord in a major key is minor. So it's C, E flat, G. And that's the chord that we're going to want to build here. but in the second chord, not the first chord. We need to find out the 5/7 of that C, E flat, G. So that means I'm going to have a G, B natural because it's a dominant seventh, D, F. Now I can build. Let's put the G there in the bass. I have to make this B natural. There's my foreign tone. Why? Because I'm spelling dominant seventh chords. And one of those tones in a secondary dominant chord is not in the key. That's where the B natural comes in. And then I can put the F here, let's say, and the D here in the soprano. So I have G, B, D, F. F is the seventh in the alto. That's going to resolve downward to my E flat. And I just need to now spell the 2 chord in the key of B flat. So the basses will sing a C. I already have an E flat. Let's look at this B natural. That acts as the leading tone. So leading tones love to go to tonic, or in this case, the temporary tonic, right? But it's in an inner voice, so I think I can go T down to sol, like so. And Re is in the soprano, and Re can travel down to Do. I wouldn't go up to Mi, never. Okay, in the last measure, we're in the key of G major. We want to build the 5/2 of the 5, going to the 5/6. So let's do a couple things first. In the key of G major, first figure out the 5 chord. That's D, F sharp, A. Now we need this 5 chord of that 5 chord. So that would be A, C sharp, E, G. Now recall that when you see a 2 next to a Roman numeral, that you're dealing with a 7th chord that's in third inversion. That's the abbreviated one because you have a 2. It could also, sometimes you'll see it as a 4/2. In this case, I have just a 5/2. That means that the 7th of that 7th chord is in the bass, and I'll circle that because it's in the third inversion. So I'm going to put a G right here in the soprano, in the bass. And now I can put in my other voices. Let's see. I need an A. I need an E. And I need a C sharp. And notice that I have to add my sharp sign, my accidental, because C sharp is not in the key of G. So that's a big hint that it's a secondary dominant chord. And also, because of that, I added that accidental. That's most likely the leading tone now into the temporary new tonic key. So C sharp goes to a D. T to Do. And notice that I have the 7th of the 7th chord in the bass, the G. But we know that 7th chords need to, the 7th of the 7th chord needs to always resolve downward by step. So that explains why my Roman numeral is a 5/6 in inversion, because the 3rd now is going to be in the bass. I have D, F sharp, A here for this chord. Like so. Okay, A is sol in the tenor, and that can stay on sol right there. T is in the soprano, that's going to go up to Do. Re is going to go down to Do, like so. And look at how smooth that is, because also now I have correct doubling, because recall that in a major or minor triad that's in first inversion, we want to double the soprano. And the sopranos are on a D, and so are the altos. So every chord is represented, every chord tone is represented there. And that's how you would deal with secondary dominance. Going back to the first measure, if we were in the key of A major, our Roman numeral would be 5/6/5 to 1. But since we're in the key of D major, it's a secondary dominant chord, and that's how we would do the Roman numeral analysis for it. In the second measure, the key of B flat major, okay, if we were in the key of C minor, then our Roman numerals would be 5/7 minor 1. But since we're in the key of B flat major, we've temporarily modulated or tonicized so that the 2 chord sounds like tonic. And in the last measure, we have G major. If we were in the key of D major, our Roman numerals would be 5-2, 1-6. But because it's a secondary dominant, we're in a different key, and we have to write the Roman numeral analysis as a something over something. And when you see the something over something, you're dealing with a secondary dominant. So let's listen to some of these secondary dominants now. So I'm in the key of D major. And here is my 5-6-5 of 5 going to the 5 chord. Listen to it again. And this sounds like new tonic. Do, but it's really sol because we're in the key of D. That's our original tonic. So we've modulated to the dominant, briefly. In the second measure, we're in the key of B flat major. And here's the 5-7 of 2 going to the minor 2. Listen to it again. Here's our original tonic key, B flat major. And in the last measure, key of G major. Here's our 5-2 of 5 going to the 5-6. This will be interesting. Listen to it again. And let's do a quick review of cadences. For the first measure, tell me what type of cadence you hear. Well, hopefully you said imperfect authentic cadence because soprano ends on mi and the bass motion is going T do, not sol do. Listen to it again. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how can it be an authentic cadence if it ends on a 5? Well, remember, we're dealing with secondary dominance, so that's a temporary shift in modulation. So to our ears, it sounds like an imperfect authentic cadence because we have a new T and a new do. Let's check out the next measure. Tell me what type of cadence you hear. Here's the key. Again. Hopefully you said perfect authentic cadence because soprano ends on do, which is the C, and the bass is going sol to do, G to C. And the last measure, we're in the key of G major. And hopefully you said imperfect authentic cadence, because although the soprano ends on our new temporary do, our bass does not end on do. Our bass ends on mi, or the third, because we're in an inversion. All right, AP, it's time to put your skills to the test. I want you to build the following chord progressions using secondary dominance for the following 3 keys. E major, the 5-2 of the 4 chord, going to the 4-6 chord. For the key of D flat major, build the 5-4-3 of 5, going to the 5 chord. And for the key of C major, build the 5-7 of the 6 chord, going to the 6 chord. Remember to resolve the secondary dominant 7th chord correctly. Also remember that in each secondary dominant chord, you will need to alter one of the notes so that it is not part of the key signature, whether that means adding a sharp sign, flat sign, or natural sign. I'll give you some time with this. Good luck.